Let me tell you what you did yesterday. The alarm went off. You didn't get up. You lay there for 9 minutes doing arithmetic. How long the shower takes, how long the drive takes, how late is actually late. And those 9 minutes were the only 9 minutes of the entire day that you spent planning anything. You got dressed for a day you didn't design. You drove to a place you didn't exactly choose, to do work somebody else assigned you, for a number somebody else calculated in an office you have never seen and will never see. And somewhere around 3 in the afternoon, you looked up at that clock on the wall and you thought, is that all it is? You came home. You were tired, not the good kind, the other kind. The tired that doesn't come from doing something hard. The tired that comes from doing something small for 11 hours. And the television went on before your coat came off. And at some point in the evening, you thought about the thing. You know the one. The thing you've been meaning to start. And you said, not tonight. And you were right. It wasn't the night for it. It's never the night for it. And then you went to bed, and you told yourself one word, tomorrow. Now here is my question. And I want a true answer. And nobody in this room can hear it. So make it a true one. How many times have you said tomorrow about the exact same thing? Not different things. Different things is just life. Life throws you different things. I mean the same thing, the same business, the same conversation with the same person, the same 20 pounds, the same telephone call, the same class you were going to sign up for at the community college, the one you drove past this morning. Count it, because if that number is bigger than 5 friends, then you don't have a plan. You've got a ritual. And a ritual is what a person performs when they have quit, but haven't gotten around to admitting it yet. Now I'm going to be direct with you for the next half hour, and I want to explain why before I start, so that you don't mistake it for meanness. It isn't that you deserve rough handling. You don't. I've never met an audience that deserved rough handling. It's that you have already been handled gently, for years, by everybody. Everybody in your life has been kind to you about this. Your wife says, you work so hard, honey. Your husband says, you've got enough on your plate. Your mother says, you've always done your best. Your friend at work leans over at lunch and says, nobody's making money in this economy. Don't beat yourself up. And every one of those people loves you. And every one of those sentences cost you a year. That's the part nobody explains. Comfort is expensive. It's just that comfort doesn't send you the bill until much later. And by the time it arrives, you've already spent the money. So today, for 30 minutes, I'm going to be the one person in your life who does not hand you a cushion. You can dislike me this afternoon and write me a letter in about 14 months. Here's the second thing, and it's harder than the first. You are not going to be young much longer. Nobody says that out loud in a room like this. We say it's never too late, and everybody applauds, and everybody drives home feeling wonderful, and not one single thing changes in anybody's life. I've decided I'm too old to run that particular racket, so let's do arithmetic instead. Arithmetic doesn't flatter anybody. Arithmetic is the most honest friend you'll ever have and the least popular. Say you're 40 years old. You've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 15,000 mornings left, if things go reasonably well. Now that sounds like a fortune, doesn't it? 15,000. You could spend that carelessly for a long time. But take out the mornings you'll be sick. Take out the ones where somebody else has an emergency, and their emergency becomes your emergency, because that's what a family is. Take out the ones where you're simply flattened and there's nothing in the tank. Call it 11,000 usable mornings. That's the whole account. That's everything you've got left, and there is no way to earn more of them. You can earn more money. You cannot earn more mornings. Now here's the question. Out of the last 30 mornings, how many belong to you? Not to your employer. Not to the newspaper. Not to whoever needed something. You. That number, right there, decides your entire life. Not your salary. Not your industry. Not your childhood. Not the economy that the fellow on the radio keeps apologizing for every evening at 6. The percentage of your own mornings that belong to you. And for most people, it runs about 1 in 20. 19 out of 20 already sold. And here's the part that ought to sting a little. Sold cheap. All right, that's the hard part. Now let me give you the good part. And the good part is genuinely good. You are not lazy. I want to say that plainly, because I suspect you have been hauling the opposite around for a very long time. Quietly. Like a stone in your shoe that you've stopped mentioning to anybody. I've stood in front of rooms like this one for a lot of years now. Thousands of rooms. Small towns and big cities. Hotel ballrooms with bad coffee. Church basements. A Rotary lunch where they served the chicken during my opening. And one time, genuinely, a barn. And I have almost never met a lazy person. I've met exhausted people. I've met frightened people who didn't have the vocabulary for it, so they called it being realistic, which is what fear calls itself when it wants to be respected. I've met people carrying something heavy that never showed on the outside, not once, not even to the people who slept in the same house. But lazy? Almost never. I could count them. Here's what I meet instead. Over and over and over again, in every city, in every trade, at every income. People who are being fed, and that is an entirely different problem. It requires an entirely different solution. And if you have spent 10 years treating the second thing like the first thing, well, no wonder nothing has worked. You've been taking medicine for a disease you don't have. You could take that medicine for another 20 years and you'd get the same result. Let me put this in farm terms, because I grew up on one out in Idaho, and that's honestly how I understand most things. On a farm, you've got two kinds of animals, the ones that feed themselves and the ones that get fed. The barn cats fed themselves. Nobody ever set out a bowl for a barn cat, not once. A barn cat that didn't hunt went and lived down the road at somebody else's place, and we wished him well and we did not think about him again. And then you had the animals we fed, twice a day, regular as sunrise, best grain on the property, never missed. Rain, snow, Christmas morning, the year my father had his back trouble and could hardly stand up straight. That feed showed up. Now here's a little piece of country arithmetic, no charge, and you can decide later how you feel about it. On a farm, the animal that gets fed the best is not the luckiest animal on the farm. I'll just let that sit there for a second. Let's get specific about you now, because principles are pleasant and specifics are what change a life. Who is feeding you? Don't go stiff on me. Everybody gets fed. I got fed for years, and I'll tell you all about it before we're through, and it is not a flattering story. So this isn't an accusation. It's an inventory. Farmers take inventory. Taking inventory is not an insult to the barn. For a great many of you, it's a paycheck that is just big enough. Not big enough to be proud of, not small enough to hurt. Just exactly big enough that you never do anything about it. And that, friends, is the most dangerous amount of money in the world. Poverty moves people. Poverty is loud. Poverty knocks on the door and turns the lights off and gets you up out of the chair. I've never worried much about a man in real trouble, because real trouble is an excellent teacher and it charges reasonable tuition. But adequacy? Adequacy will put a capable human being to sleep for 30 years and then send flowers to the funeral. For some of you, it's a person. Somebody who covers for you. Somebody who makes the hard telephone call so that you never had to learn how. Somebody who handles the landlord, handles your mother, handles the thing you said you'd handle. Somebody who says, you're fine exactly the way you are, at precisely the moment when you needed to hear, you are better than this, and we both know it. Now that's not love. I want to be careful here, because I'm not attacking anybody's marriage, but that is comfort wearing love's coat. Real love says the hard thing at the kitchen table on a Sunday night, and then stays in the room afterward. Anybody can say the easy thing. The easy thing costs nothing and buys nothing. And for some of you, and I say this with genuine affection, it's that television set. 20-some hours a week for the average family. 20 hours. That's half a work week. That is a college education every 4 years, sitting right there in the corner of your living room in a nice wooden cabinet with a doily on top. And here's the trap in it. And it's a beautiful trap. It's the best trap ever built. You watch a program about a man who built something, and you feel something. Real warmth, real lift, a little rush at the back of the neck. You turn to your spouse and you say, that's what I'm talking about right there. Now understand me carefully. The feeling of ambition and the act of ambition produce nearly the same sensation in the moment. Same warmth, same lift, same rush. One of them rearranges your entire life and the lives of your children and your children's children. The other one is a bowl of grain with music behind it. And you can have that second one every single night for 30 years, and it will never once tell you what it's costing. Now, I don't want to merely describe your problem to you. Anybody can describe your problems. Your relatives do it every Thanksgiving, free of charge, usually before the pie. I want to show you the machinery underneath it. Because once you see the machinery, you can't unsee it. And that's worth more to you than anything else I'll say today. Here it is. Comfort doesn't take your ability. Comfort takes your reason. Read that twice. Your ability is completely intact. Every bit of it. Your mind works. Your hands work. Your capacity to learn something difficult is exactly where it was when you were 22 years old. And in some respects, it's better, because you've got judgment now. And judgment is expensive, and you already paid for it. Nothing has been removed from you. Not one thing. What went missing is necessity. And here's what I know about people after a lifetime of watching them. Human beings are magnificent under necessity and mediocre under sufficiency. Put a genuine demand on a person, and something old and reliable wakes up. You've seen it. The fellow who was nothing special for 15 years, and then the plant closed, and inside of 2 years he owned a business. Everybody says, "My, he really came alive, didn't he?" He didn't come alive. He was always alive. He was fed, and then he wasn't, and the difference was visible from the road. Take the demand away, and people don't collapse. Collapse would be dramatic. At least you'd notice a collapse. Somebody would bring a casserole. No, they drift. Quietly. Pleasantly. At about 1 degree a year. And 1 degree doesn't feel like anything. That is the whole trouble with it. Nobody in the history of this world has ever felt a degree. There's no sensation attached. You can't wake up in the night from a degree. But set out across an ocean 1 degree off, and you will land in a country that is not on your ticket. And you will spend your remaining years explaining to people how you ended up there. And here's the terrible part. Every word of the explanation will be true. So write this down, if you're the writing kind. And I hope you are, because a life worth living is a life worth writing down. Nobody drifts anywhere worth arriving at. Drift only runs downhill. Rivers drift. And every river on this planet ends in the identical place, the lowest ground it can find. Now that's fine for a river. A river has no ambitions and no grandchildren. You have both. I've taught for years that life comes in seasons, and that the great mistake is doing the wrong work in the wrong season. Don't plant in the winter. Don't stand out in the field in April demanding a harvest. Simple stuff. The farmers settled all this several thousand years ago, and the rest of us are still catching up. But there's a season the old books skip. And I want to name it for you today, because I believe a good many of you are standing in it right this minute. It's the season where nothing is wrong. Not winter. Winter you can see coming. Winter is honest. Winter walks right up to you and says, "I am hard, prepare accordingly." And people are magnificent in winter. Some of the finest human beings I have ever known were built entirely out of one terrible year. Ask a man who's had a genuinely bad year what it did to him, and if enough time has passed, he'll tell you it made him. No. I'm talking about the long, mild, overcast season, where the crop is small, but it's enough. Where the roof leaks a little, but not enough to call anybody about. Where the marriage is quiet, but it isn't cold. Where the job is dull, but it isn't painful. Where the car runs. Where the bills get paid, most months, if you're careful in August. Nothing to fight, nothing to fix. No emergency to organize a life around. And that season, my friends, has destroyed more human potential than every hardship in recorded history. It isn't close, because hardship recruits you. Hardship takes you by the collar and says, "Get up, we have a problem, and there is nobody else here." But sufficiency never asks you for anything at all. Sufficiency is the most polite thief you will ever meet. It doesn't take your wallet, it takes your Tuesdays, about 52 of them a year, for 30 years, and then one morning it hands you back a life you don't recognize, and it says, "Well, you seemed happy, so." Lion mode, now I know. That phrase has been on a bumper sticker. And once a thing gets on a bumper sticker, it generally stops meaning anything at all. So let me clear away the nonsense first, and then we'll get to work. Lion mode is not walking around angry. That is not a lion. That is a man with indigestion. I've met plenty of those, and they don't accomplish much either. They just accomplish it loudly. It's not dominating people. Lions don't dominate. Lions hunt. And the difference between those two words is the difference between a big life and a merely loud one. Domination is about other people. Hunting is about your dinner. A man who is genuinely providing for himself has very little interest in pushing anybody around. He hasn't got the time, and it is certainly not roaring. Here's a fact I've always enjoyed. A lion roars mostly at night, mostly after the hunt, and mostly to say one thing. This ground is spoken for. The roar isn't the work. The roar is the receipt, and you cannot roar your way to a meal. I know that for certain, because I tried it for about 6 years, and I'll tell you exactly how that turned out in just a minute. So, 3 parts. Get your pen. 1. A lion feeds himself. Nobody brings the meat. 2. A lion holds territory. He knows where his ground starts and where it stops, and he walks the whole line, whether he feels like it that particular day or not. 3. A lion misses and goes back out. And we'll spend real time on that one, because that's the one that's costing you the most, and most of you don't know it yet. Feed yourself. Hold your ground. Go back out. That's the seminar. You could stand up right now and go home and you'd have your money's worth. But stay. The details are where the life is. Now let me tell you about me, because I've been standing up here asking you hard questions for a while now, and fair is fair. At 25 years of age, I had pennies in my pocket. I want to be precise about that. Not pennies in savings. Pennies total. Checking, savings, coffee can on top of the refrigerator, glove box, and the change under the seat of a car I was behind on. Farm boy from Idaho. 1 year of college. I went 1 year, decided I knew enough, and quit. That's a sentence I have had a long time to think about. Married. Baby girl. A job that was fine. And a future that I had every intention of getting around to. And creditors calling the house. That's the detail I never leave out, because I want you to hear it. I want you to hear the telephone ringing in the evening, and everybody in the room going very quiet, and nobody answering it. Ring after ring after ring, and a man sitting in his own front room pretending he isn't there. That was my home. 25 years old. And then one afternoon there was a knock at the door. Girl Scout, little uniform, big smile, selling cookies, $2 a box. And she gave me the whole presentation. And she was good, honestly. She was better at her job than I was at mine. And I want you to appreciate the full humor of that, because a man ought to be able to laugh at himself or he'll never learn anything. And I did not have $2. Now I want you to understand what happened next, because I have thought about it nearly every day since. I did not say, "I'm sorry, young lady, I can't afford it today." I lied to her. I put on a big smile, and I said, "Well, we've already bought plenty of Girl Scout cookies. We've still got some in the house." And she said, "That's wonderful. Thank you, sir." And off she went down the sidewalk to the next house, perfectly happy, and she never thought about it again. And I closed that door. And I stood there in my own hallway, and I said out loud, with nobody there to hear it, "I don't want to live like this anymore. 25 years old, lying to a Girl Scout over $2. Not because I was a bad man. I want to be clear about that, because some of you are sitting there right now with something in your own past that you've been using as evidence of your character, and I want to take that away from you. I was not a bad man. I was a fed man. Paycheck every 2 weeks, regular as sunrise, whether I had read a book that month or not, whether I had gotten better at one single thing or not, whether I had become worth $1 more to anybody on this earth than I was the year before. And I had not. I'll be honest with you. In 6 years, I had not become worth $1 more. But the feed came anyway, twice a month, regular as sunrise. And I want to ask you something, and nobody can hear your answer. What time does your feed come? Now, about a year after that, I met a man named Earl Schoaf. He was a millionaire. First one I had ever been in a room with. And I could not stop looking at him, because he didn't look like what I expected. He wasn't loud. He wasn't flashy. He was unhurried. That's the word I finally found for it. The man was unhurried, and I had never in my life met a person who was not in a hurry. Everybody I knew was in a hurry, and none of them were going anywhere. And I got up the nerve to talk to him afterward, and eventually I went to work for him, and for the next 5 years he was my teacher. I'll tell you the 3 things he said that turned it around. They cost me a fortune to learn. They'll cost you nothing. The first one came about a month in. He looked at my situation. And understand, I had explained my situation beautifully. I had a superb explanation. I had the taxes, and the company, and the boss, and the economy, and the timing, and my wife's family all laid out like a hand of cards, and I'd been playing that hand for years, and it always won. And Mr. Schoaf listened to the whole thing, very politely, never interrupted once, and then he said, "Mr. Rohn, how much money have you saved in the last 6 years?" And I said, "None." And he said, and he wasn't cruel about it. "That's what got me." He said it the way you'd read a thermometer. "Who sold you on that plan? Who sold you on that plan? Because friends, you are on one, right now. Everybody's on a plan. You may not have chosen your plan. You may never have looked at it. You may not know who wrote it. But somebody's plan is running your Tuesdays. And if it isn't yours, then it belongs to somebody who is doing very well by it. The second thing he told me, I built my whole life on. He said, "Mr. Rohn, you don't need more money. You need to become worth more." And I argued with him. Of course I did. I was 26 and I knew everything. I said, "But the job only pays what it pays." And he said, "That's right. The job pays what the job is worth. It does not pay what you are worth. If you become worth more than the job cannot hold you, and you'll leave, and you'll be right to leave. But if you're not worth more than the job, then the job is not your problem." And the third thing he said quietly, and I almost missed it. He said, "You know, Income rarely exceeds personal development. Rarely exceeds personal development, which means if you want your income to go up, you have to go up first. You go first, not the market, not the boss, not the economy. You. And I'll tell you what happened. 6 years after I stood in that hallway lying to a Girl Scout, I was a millionaire. 6 years. Same brain, same education, which was 1 year of college. Same country, same economy, same everything. The only thing that changed was that somebody stopped feeding me and I got hungry, and then a man taught me where to point the hunger. Now I want you to put down your pen for a moment. This next part doesn't need writing down. It needs hearing. I told you a little while ago that you're not lazy. Now I'm going to tell you why that matters, and this is the whole reason I came here today. If you sleep through everything else, wake up for this. Being fed feels exactly like being lazy from the inside. That's the cruelty of it. That's the entire trick. Because you sit there at 42 years of age with all this unused capacity, and you're smart. You know you're smart. That's the maddening part. You're smarter than half the people who are doing better than you, and you know their names. And you look at what you've built, and you reach the only conclusion available to you. Something is wrong with my character, so you buy the book. You do the 30-day program. You get up at 5 o'clock in the morning for 9 days running, and you feel wonderful. You feel like a new man. You tell people about it. And on the 10th day, you don't get up. And you lie there in the dark, and you conclude that the case against you is now proven, and you file it away with all the other evidence. And you go to work. Friends, listen to me. You were never a discipline problem. You were a hunger problem. And you cannot discipline your way out of a full stomach. It will not hold. It has never held for anybody, anywhere, in the history of this world. You'll white-knuckle it for 2 weeks, and then the feed comes at the regular hour like it always has, and you will be standing right there like you always are, and you will file one more piece of evidence in a case against yourself that was never true to begin with. So let me do something for you, right here, this afternoon, in this room. That case is dismissed. 20 years of it. Every failed January. Every abandoned notebook in the drawer with 3 pages filled in. Every program you paid for and quit. Every promise you made to your spouse and didn't keep. Dismissed. Not because you have an excuse. You don't have an excuse. But because you were answering the wrong question with tremendous energy. The question was never, what is wrong with me? The question is, what would make me hungry again? And that question, unlike the first one, has an answer. It has a practical answer. And I've got it, and I'm going to hand it to you right now. You cannot fake an appetite. Let's start there. You can stand in front of the bathroom mirror and inform yourself that you are a lion until your family gets concerned. And when the feed comes at the regular hour, you will be right there at the fence with everybody else, with a positive attitude. Hunger comes from proximity. It comes from getting close enough to something to smell it. 3 ways, all of them simple. And simple is not the same thing as easy. First, go physically stand in a better life. Not read about it, not watch a program about it. Go stand in it. If you want to own a business, go into one. Ask the owner for 20 minutes on a slow Tuesday afternoon. And here's what will surprise you. Most of them will say yes. Nobody ever asks a business owner anything except for a discount. Ask him what the worst year was and how he got through it, and he will talk to you for an hour, and he will not charge you a nickel, and you will learn more than a semester. If you want a different house, go walk through one on a Sunday afternoon when they're showing it. Stand in the kitchen. Look out the window at what those people look at every morning. If you want to be a different kind of father, go spend a Saturday around a family that's doing it well. And don't say much. Just watch how they talk to each other at the table. Watch how the father listens. That's the whole lesson, right there, and you can't get it out of a book. Something happens when you get physically close to a better version of your own life. Your body takes a reading. And that reading is worth more than 100 inspiring speeches, including this one, because you can't argue with it afterward. You were standing there. Second, tell one person with a spine, not everybody. Most people are a soft place to land, which is a lovely quality in a friend and a fatal one in a witness. Pick one person who will actually hold you to it, and you know who that is. You thought of them just now, and you also thought of a reason not to tell them, and that reason is the reason to tell them. Give them the specific thing and the specific date. Not, I'm thinking about going back to school. That's a wish. Wishes evaporate. Say, by the 15th of next month, I will have registered and paid. Now you've built a small, portable piece of necessity, and you carry it in your pocket, and it goes to work on you at 11 o'clock at night when nothing else will. Third, and this is the one that actually does it. Start before you're ready, and let the work make you hungry. Appetite follows action far more reliably than action follows appetite. Nobody has ever woken up wanting to study bookkeeping at 5 in the morning. That has not once happened on this earth. But somewhere around the third month, a person starts becoming somebody. And becoming somebody is the most addictive thing there is. You'll skip a meal for it. You'll get up in the dark for it. Not because you're disciplined, but because you finally got a taste and now you want the rest. Which brings me to two people I want you to meet. I knew a fellow. I'll call him Danny. 34 when I met him. Fleet maintenance for a regional trucking outfit outside Columbus, Ohio. Sharp man, funny. The kind of man who could fix anything you put in front of him and then explain it to you in a way that made you feel intelligent, which is a rarer gift than fixing it. Danny had a plan, and it was a good plan. He was going to open his own shop. He had it all worked out. He'd found the building, an old two-bay off the state route with a gravel lot and a sign that was already half the right shape. And he had a number in his head for what he needed saved before he'd sign anything. I asked him about it every time I came through. First year, hadn't hit the number, and he hadn't. That was accurate. Second year, his wife's hours got cut at the hospital. Bad timing. Also accurate. Third year, interest rates. Now, if you remember what interest rates did in those years, you'll know that wasn't just accurate. That was sensible. Any banker in the country would have agreed with him. Fourth year, the kids were little. You understand. And here's what I need you to hear about Danny. And if you miss this, you'll miss the whole thing. Every reason that man gave me was true. Not one lie. Not one exaggeration. Every single reason was accurate, verifiable, reasonable, and would hold up in any court in America. If you put Danny's reasons in front of a jury, he'd win. Unanimous. I saw him again when he was 51. Still at the Fleet Yard. Good pension coming, and he'd earned every dollar of it. Grandchild on the way. Nice man. Still funny. And he said something to me at that lunch that I have never been able to put down. He looked out the window, and he said, "You know, I never decided not to do it." He never decided not to do it. And that's exactly right. That is precisely what happened. That is the most accurate sentence anybody has ever said to me about a human life. Because nobody sits down on a Tuesday afternoon and signs a document surrendering their future. There's no ceremony. Nobody comes to the house. There's no form to fill out. You just wake up one morning and the two-bay off the state route is a tire store with somebody else's name on the sign, and you're 51 years old, and you never decided anything at all. The cage doesn't have bars, friends. It has reasons. And I'll tell you the last thing about Danny, because I don't want to make him into a monster. He isn't one. About a year after that lunch, his son-in-law asked him for help getting started in a little repair operation out of a garage. And Danny gave him everything. Every bit of it. The whole plan he'd carried in his head for 17 years. The location study, the equipment list, the pricing, all of it, handed over across a kitchen table in an afternoon. And that boy is doing well today. Now you tell me what that is. I've thought about it for years. I think a man who will not spend his own treasure will sometimes give it away, because giving it away is the only way left to prove it was real. Don't do that. Spend yours. Now let me tell you about somebody else, because I never want to leave you standing in the dark part of the story. Theresa, 41 years old, bookkeeper for 3 doctor's offices, divorced, 2 boys, 12 and 9, and about $11,000 of debt that wasn't originally hers but was certainly hers now. Theresa did not have a vision. I want to be clear about that, because we all love the story where somebody has a vision on a mountaintop. She didn't have one. She had a Tuesday. Here's what happened. Her youngest boy had one of those school assignments where you interview a parent about their job. And he sat there at the table with his notebook and his pencil, very serious about it, the way a 9-year-old is serious. And he went through all the questions. What do you do? How long have you done it? Do you have to wear special clothes? And then he asked the last one. He said, "Mom, do you like it?" And she said, "Yes, honey." And then she went out and sat in her car in the driveway for 11 minutes, because she had just lied to a 9-year-old boy, and she had done it smoothly. No pause, no hesitation, which meant she'd been practicing. Now some of you just went very quiet, and I know why. You've had your Girl Scout. You've had your 11 minutes in the driveway. Maybe last month. Maybe this morning in the parking lot before you came in here. Here's what Theresa did with hers. She started that week, not with a business, not with a plan. She started with 1 hour. 5 o'clock in the morning, before the boys were up, at the kitchen table, with a correspondence course in accounting and a stack of ledger paper. 1 hour. Some mornings it was 40 minutes, because the 9-year-old had a bad dream and ended up in her bed. Some mornings she understood absolutely nothing and went to work feeling stupid all day. She did it for 14 months. At 43, she was certified. At 44, she was doing books for 2 practices on the side, evenings and Saturdays, at the same kitchen table. At 46, she had 4 people working for her, and she re-signed from all 3 of those doctors' offices on the same afternoon, which she told me she enjoyed considerably more than she should have. I told her she'd earned it. Now, what was the difference between Theresa and Danny? It wasn't brains. Danny could rebuild a diesel engine from memory. I watched him do it. It wasn't circumstances. Theresa had worse circumstances by every measure you could name. Less money, less time, less help, 2 boys, and nobody to hand them to. The difference was 1 hour at a kitchen table, defended like territory, for 14 months. That's it. That is the entire difference between 2 complete human lives. Now we have to talk about missing. Because this is where I lose people. And I would much rather lose you here, in a nice safe room with bad coffee, than out there in your actual life on a Thursday afternoon. Here's a number I want you to carry with you. A lion hunting on open ground misses about 8 times out of 10. Say that back to yourself. The most magnificent predator on the African continent, built by a few million years for exactly one job, and he fails most of the time, routinely, publicly, in front of the other lions. And do you know what he does afterward? Nothing. That's the answer. He doesn't do anything at all. He doesn't lie under a tree and reconsider whether he's really cut out for this line of work. He doesn't conclude the gazelles were unusually fast this season. He doesn't decide to look into something with more stability and better hours. He walks back to the tall grass and he waits, because the mist carried no information about who he is. It was Tuesday. Now here's the human version. And I want you to see how ridiculous it is when we hold it up to the light. You make 11 telephone calls. 9 of them say no. And somewhere around call number 7, you begin constructing a theory. Isn't that something? The lion doesn't build a theory. But you do. You build an entire philosophy out of a Tuesday afternoon. I'm just not a natural at this. I guess I'm not really a salesperson. Maybe this isn't my thing. And you deliver that theory to yourself with real conviction. And here's the dangerous part. It sounds like wisdom. It sounds like maturity. It sounds like a man who has finally come to know himself. Self-awareness is what the ego puts on when it wants to be taken seriously. Let me show you the machinery on this one too. Your ego has exactly one job, and it does that job beautifully. Protect the story of who you are. Now, if you've spent 20 years with the story, I'm a capable person, and you have, and you are, then a miss is genuinely dangerous. A miss is evidence against the file. So the ego does something very clever. It does not dispute the miss. It can't. You were there. There were witnesses. Instead, it hands you a bigger explanation that makes the miss permanent, and therefore not your fault. I'm not a natural at this is not humility, friends. It is an insurance policy. Because if you're not a natural, then you can stop. And stopping isn't failure, it's realism. You get to keep the file intact and quit at the same time, and everybody nods, and nobody asks you about it at Christmas. That is a tremendous deal, and your ego is an excellent salesman. Better than you, better than me. So how do you beat it? You need a rule that you made in advance, before your feelings got a vote. Theresa had one. Her rule was, the hour happens whether it goes well or not. Not, the hour happens if I'm making progress. Not, the hour happens if I feel up to it. The hour happens. Do you see what that does? It takes the decision away from the person who is most compromised. The woman at 5 in the morning who is tired and discouraged and has a genuinely persuasive theory about how she was never any good with numbers. That woman does not get a vote anymore. She was outvoted 14 months earlier by a wiser version of herself, sitting in a car in a driveway. That's what discipline actually is. It is not force of will. Force of will runs out on a Thursday, every time. Discipline is a decision made once, in good conditions, that you refuse to reopen in bad ones. Now let me give you 2 more people, quickly, because I want you to see this in the same trade, so you can't blame the trade. 2 men sold insurance out of the same office in Wichita. I met them the same week. The first one, call him Ray, kept a card in his shirt pocket with a number on it. Every no got a tally mark. And when he got to the end of a bad day, he'd look at that card and say, well, that's 12 marks closer. The second man, and he was better looking, better spoken, and frankly, better at the presentation, kept nothing. He kept it all in his head. And so a bad Tuesday didn't stay a Tuesday. It became a mood, and the mood became a week, And by Thursday, he was rearranging his desk drawer and calling it preparation. Ray was in that office 11 years and retired comfortable. The other fellow left the business inside of 2 years and told everybody the territory was no good. Same territory, same product, same office, same coffee, same weather. One of them had a system for absorbing a no, and one of them had a personality that took it personally. And a personality is not a system. When you go out there, take a system. Take a card in your shirt pocket, because your feelings will show up whether you invite them or not, and they will vote against you, and you need something in writing. Second item on our list, and this is where a lot of you are actually bleeding. A lion's territory can run 30, 40 square miles, and he walks it. Not all in one day, but he covers it. He marks the edges. And when something crosses that line, there is a conversation. Here's the human translation. Your territory isn't your property. Your territory is your time, your standards, and the people you keep. Your time. If you don't put a fence around it, it will be spent by whoever asks first. And I'll be gentle here, because I know some of you were raised to believe that saying no is unkind. So let me put it another way. Every yes is a withdrawal from an account, and that account is funding your children's future and your own character. When you say yes to something that doesn't matter, you are not being generous. You are being generous with money that belongs to somebody small who lives in your house. Your standards. This is what you'll tolerate in yourself. And standards are strange things. They never announce themselves when they drop. There's no alarm. You skip the thing once for a genuinely good reason, and the good reason is true. 3 weeks later, there's no thing and no reason either. Just an absence where something used to live, and you've stopped noticing the absence. So here's the discipline, and it's small, and it works. When you break a standard, say it out loud the same day, not with shame. Shame is useless. Shame just makes a man tired. Just say it. I said I'd do that, and I didn't. Naming it keeps the standard alive, even when the behavior slipped, because what kills you is not the slip. Everybody slips. What kills you is the silent renegotiation and the people you keep. I've said for years that you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and I have never found a reason to soften it. You are running a 5-person experiment on yourself right now, and here's the thing. You didn't design it. Mostly it was designed by proximity, and by history, and by who happened to be assigned to your department, and by whose kid played on the same team as your kid in 1979. That's not a plan. That's weather. Now, one hard thing about that, and then we'll close. When a lion makes a kill, things arrive. Hyenas, vultures, other lions who did none of the running. Somebody in your life is going to be unhappy when you start hunting. And I want you prepared for it, because it hurts more than you'd expect, and it comes from a direction you will not see coming. It usually isn't an enemy. Enemies are easy. Enemies are almost a gift. It'll be somebody who loves you. And they'll say, "You've changed." Or, "Think you're better than us now." Or my personal favorite, "The kindest knife ever made. I just don't want to see you get your hopes up." Now hear me. Most of those people are not malicious. They're frightened, because your change is a mirror, and nobody asked for a mirror at dinner. When you start hunting, you are accidentally testifying that hunting was available the whole time, to everybody, including them. And that is a hard sermon for a man who has been standing at the fence for 20 years and calling it prudence. So, 2 rules. Don't argue, and don't announce. You will never win that debate, and every hour spent defending your decision is an hour not spent executing it. Go quiet and go to work. In 2 years, the results will make an argument that your mouth never could. And leave the door open. Don't write anybody off. People change on their own schedule, not yours. I have seen the skeptical brother-in-law turn up 3 years later, hat in his hands, asking how you did it. Be somebody he can ask. Here's your practice. Because a philosophy you can't use on Monday morning is just entertainment with a good vocabulary. I call it the patrol. 4 questions, 10 minutes, every morning before the world gets a vote. What am I hunting today? One thing, not a list. A list is how a person feels productive about being scattered. One thing that, if you get it, today counted. Where is my fence today? The one thing you will say no to. Name it in advance, because the no you planned is the only no you'll actually give. Where did I miss yesterday? And what does it mean? And the answer to that second half is always identical. It means nothing. It was Tuesday. Say it out loud until you believe it. And who is feeding me? 10 seconds. Just an honest look at the bowl. 4 questions. 10 minutes. A cheap notebook and a kitchen table. And I know exactly what some of you are thinking, because I thought it too, sitting across from Mr. Shoaf with my superb explanation in my pocket. That's too simple to change anything. Friends, the things that change a life are always too simple. That is precisely why nobody does them. If it took a mountain and a monastery, we would all sign up tomorrow. There's dignity in a mountain. You could tell people about the mountain, but a kitchen table at 5 in the morning with 4 questions and a 99-cent notebook? There is no glory in that whatsoever. Nobody will ever ask you about it, which is exactly why it works. Because it is small enough to survive a bad week. And anything that survives a bad week will survive a decade. Let me take you back to where we started. I told you what you did yesterday. The alarm, the 9 minutes, the clock at 3 in the afternoon, the word tomorrow. Now let me tell you about tomorrow, and then I'll let you go. That Girl Scout is still out there somewhere. She'd be a grown woman now, with children of her own, maybe grandchildren. And she has no idea, none, that she changed a man's entire life over $2 worth of cookies on an ordinary afternoon. She just went on to the next house. That's how it comes. It doesn't come with music. It doesn't come with a sign. It comes as a small, ordinary humiliation on an ordinary afternoon that you could very easily explain away. And nearly everybody does explain it away. That's the whole thing right there. That's the difference between the people who change and the people who don't. And it isn't courage and it isn't talent. It's what you do in the 10 seconds after you close the door. Theresa's came from a 9-year-old with a pencil. Danny's never came at all. And I want you to notice something. Danny is not a tragedy. Danny has a pension and a grandchild, and he's a good man, and he laughs at his own jokes, and he sleeps fine. Danny is just a man who never decided, and that is available to every one of us. It is the easiest thing in the world, and it requires no effort at all, and it is completely reversible right up until it isn't. So here's what I know, and then I'm finished. You are not lazy. You have been fed, and being fed is a condition, not a character, which means it can be changed on an ordinary Tuesday by an ordinary person with an ordinary notebook. The fence was never locked. There isn't one. There is only a habit of standing there. And a habit is nothing but a decision you have stopped making on purpose. So make it on purpose, tomorrow morning. Before anybody feeds you anything, before the radio, before the newspaper, before the coffee, before the small, comfortable grain of an ordinary day. Ask the 4 questions. Hunt one thing. Hold one line. Miss and call it Tuesday. Do that for 14 months, and I will not have to tell you that you're a lion. Everybody around you will already know, and you won't have said one word. Go get your own dinner. It tastes better. Every lion who ever tried it will tell you exactly the same thing. Thank you.